My name is Samuel Hartley, and for most of my life I believe that if you built things strong enough, they would last forever. Bridges, water systems, a marriage, they all followed the same laws of engineering, stress, balance, endurance. But grief doesn't care about physics. When my wife, Emily, died, the world fell apart like a structure I hadn't calculated right. 32 years of marriage, gone in 18 months of hospital rooms, cold scans, and the sound of machines pretending to fight death. I retired the year she passed, packed up our life from a too-big house, and drove until I found a place that looked like silence. That place was Silver Lake Haven, a gated community wrapped around a lake so still it felt sacred. 47 houses, manicured lawns. Hadn't yet fulfilled. Because before Emily died, she made me swear I'd build her a dock. She'd sketched it herself, on yellow paper during chemo, cedar planks, brass bolts, nothing fancy. Just strong and honest. Build it, she whispered, even if I'm not there to see it. You build bridges for everyone else, Sam. Build one for us. So after the funeral, I built. Through wind and was rebuilding the shape of my soul. For 6 months, I worked alone. No contractors, no neighbors. Just me, the hammer, and the sound of water. When it was done, it wasn't just a dock. It was a memorial, a promise made of cedar and grief. Every morning, I'd sit there with my coffee and talk to her. About the lake, about the quiet, about how the sunrise looked softer through mist. Sometimes, the dock creaked like she was answering. And then one Tuesday morning, Peace walked down those planks wearing high heels and holding a clipboard. That's how I met Brenda Whitmore, president of the Silver Lake Haven Homeowners Association, a woman whose smile had the sharpness of a legal disclaimer. She appeared out of the fog like a storm in lipstick. Designer suit, sunglasses at 7 a.m., perfume that made the pine trees smell like debt. Good morning, she said, stepping onto my dock like it was a crime scene. You're Mr. Hartley? Yes. I'm here on. No approval from the HOA design committee. She smiled. You should have filed a request. I stared at her clipboard, a stack of forms and fine print that could suffocate a man. I filed all the, rising to my throat. Ma'am, this dock is built to code, inspected, and approved. It's not going anywhere. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Then you'll start accruing daily. Through the mist until she vanished behind the white fences lining Silver Lake Drive. That was the moment I realized peace had an expiration date. That night, I sat on the dock again. Coffee gone cold, stars reflected in the still water. I whispered to Emily, I think we have a problem. The wind shifted like she was listening. I could almost hear her laugh, that low. We don't shout. We research. The office was quiet, lit by buzzing fluorescent lights. Behind the counter sat Doris Henderson, the kind of woman who looked like she'd seen every argument about property lines since the Reagan era. She wore reading glasses on a chain and the patient smile of someone who's been underestimated her whole life. Can I help you, sweetheart? She asked. Keyboard, humming. Let's see lot 32, lakeside frontage, oh my. She leaned forward, squinting. You, my dear, have what's called riparian rights. I frowned. Meaning you. Later with a folder that smelled like time itself. This, she said, laying out brittle papers on the counter, is from 1924. A man named Elias Hartley. Your great-grandfather, I assume? Watershed. I stared at the page. The signature was still legible, written in old-world cursive, Elias W. Hartley, County Water Authority engineer. Doris grinned. Looks like you didn't just buy a house, honey. You inherited a whole lake. It took a second for that to sink in. I drove home in silence, gravel crunching under my tires, my brain trying to process the absurdity of it all. Brenda had threatened me over a dock sitting on water I legally owned. That night, I sat on the dock again, the same one she wanted gone. The moonlight rippled across the lake, and I swear, for the first time since Emily died, I laughed. Not loud, not bitter, just the quiet, astonished kind of laugh you make when you realize the universe still has a sense of humor. A few days later, arms crossed over his perfectly tailored golf shirt. This so-called dock, Brenda declared, clicking through slides of collapsing piers she'd found on Google, is a violation of our aesthetic standards. We cannot allow one man's recklessness to endanger our community harmony. When she finally opened the floor, I stood up slowly, the folder of records under my arm. With all due respect, I said, this HOA has no jurisdiction over this lake. The water management rights belong to the Hartley family, granted by the county in 1924. Your authority ends at the shoreline. The room, a voice spoke up, Margaret Keene, a retired property lawyer. He's right, she said. If those rights are still on record, they supersede any HOA rules. Brenda's jaw tightened. Home, my phone was buzzing with texts from neighbors, some apologizing, some thanking me. A few just said, good luck. You're gonna need it. They were right. Because Brenda Whitmore didn't lose gracefully. She lost like a thunderstorm, loud, chaotic, and determined to take down trees on the way out. Within 48 hours, I found another notice taped to my door, final warning. Noncompliance will result in legal action. And under that, scrawled in pen, someone had written, you'll regret this. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by blueprints and old maps, reading Elias's notes about flood systems and maintenance routes. That's when I found the part that changed everything. Authority extends to all tributaries and reservoirs connected. Every drainage ditch, every waterway within the county's eastern boundary. When I called Doris the next morning, she practically squealed. Sweetheart, you're not just a property owner, you're technically a utility operator. I laughed. So what you're saying is, I'm my own water department. Exactly, she said. And if anyone tries to regulate you without authorization, they're breaking the law. The next time Brenda came knocking, I'd be ready. But I underestimated her capacity for chaos. Because 2 mornings later, I woke to the sound of destruction and the smell of diesel. The sound that woke me wasn't birds or morning wind. It was splintering wood, the kind of crack that makes your stomach drop before your brain even catches up. I ran outside, barefoot, half asleep, half afraid, and there it was, my dock, the one I'd built with my own hands, Emily's dock, destroyed. Broken planks floating like driftwood, brass bolts glittering under the. And I'm the tooth fairy. I didn't yell, didn't even move for a while. Just watched the wreckage float. The spot where Emily's memorial bench was supposed to sit, where I'd planned to carve her. Doesn't tremble, doesn't shout. Engineers don't explode. We calculate. By noon, I had a plan. I spent the afternoon documenting every splinter, photographing every inch. Then I made 3 calls. The kind of calls that start wars in suits and ties. First, Detective Carla Mendez from County Water Patrol, a friend of a friend who handled environmental crimes. Second, Patricia Vance, a water rights attorney famous for making bureaucrats weep. Third, Tom Lopez, a marine mechanic who owed me a favor from an old bridge inspection job. They showed up before sunset. Boat, crouched, whistled low. Look at this. Throttle linkage filed smooth. No way that's accidental. He looked up at me. Someone rigged it to stick forward. Carla wrote it down. So intentional destruction of property. Patricia smiled like a cat. And since this dock's built over federally protected water infrastructure, that's not just vandalism. That's a federal fireworks show, pretending they weren't watching. Rick was cuffed before he could even finish his morning coffee. Brenda came running out in a silk robe, yelling about conspiracies, sabotaging private infrastructure. That night, under the cold moonlight, I sat on the broken dock with my coffee and whispered, "We're just getting started, Em." The next morning, forging historical documents, fabricating property rights, and, my personal favorite, exploiting grief-induced delusions to manipulate community governance. They demanded $47,000 in fines and burst out laughing. They're calling you mentally incompetent because you have better paperwork? I almost admire the creativity. But Brenda wasn't stopping at paperwork. That same day, she uploaded a video, professionally lit, filmed in her granite kitchen, a vase of lilies strategically placed behind her for sympathy points. Fellow residents, she began, voice trembling with. The retired lawyer who'd backed me during that first meeting was digging deep into HOA and corporation records. What she found made her grin like a woman about to ruin someone's week. Since, I blinked. So they've been charging people for something they never owned? Exactly. Fraud, negligence, take your pick. You could sue them into extinction. And then Doris Henderson called from the records office, excitement bubbling in her voice. Sam, you better sit down. I checked the Hartley Water Trust account. The county's been paying annual maintenance fees since 1950. With interest, You've got about $847,000 sitting in there. For a second, I couldn't speak. All I could do was laugh, low, disbelieving. Emily used to say I'd never see a return on all the good I built for other people. Turns out she was wrong. But this wasn't about money. It was about power, the quiet kind. The kind written in ink a century ago. Because those payments weren't charity. They were recognition. The county had been acknowledging the Hartley family's control of the watershed for generations. Which meant Brenda wasn't just wrong. She was standing on my water, arguing I didn't exist. The next few weeks turned into a war of documents. Patricia filed official notice of Water Management Authority with the county. The clerk's office confirmed it, stamped and sealed. We were no longer just right. We were legally untouchable. Meanwhile, Brenda went nuclear. She filed complaints with every agency she could. They came in khaki vests and clipboards, expecting to find a disaster zone. What they found was Elias's dam, flawless, precise, maintained like a cathedral to engineering. EPA Inspector Sarah Delgado shook her head, awestruck. This is the cleanest private water management system I've ever seen. Whoever maintains it deserves an award, not a fine. When she discovered Brenda had filed the complaint under false emergency status, her tone went cold. You realize that's a felony, right? Brenda must have thought embarrassment could be drowned in paperwork because she filed another complaint the next week, this time accusing me of environmental manipulation for personal gain. By then, her credibility was collapsing faster than Rick's business contracts. But I wasn't done. Rick's company. No bidding, no oversight, inflated costs. Margaret flipped through the files and whistled. This is textbook fraud. We documented everything. Photos, invoices, signatures. And when the time came, Patricia delivered it straight to the county attorney's office. The investigation began quietly, then roared. By spring, the HOA was crumbling. Fines retracted. At the dam, 3 figures in the dark. Rick, out on bail, and 2 of his workers. They were trying to cut the overflow cables, the ones controlling seasonal water release. They wanted to cause a flood, to create the very emergency Brenda had been screaming about for months. The footage was crystal clear. Faces, tools, timestamps. When I called Detective Mendez, she didn't even hesitate. That's federal terrorism, Sam. They're done. By dawn, the FBI was on site. By noon, Rick was in cuffs again, this time for sabotage of critical infrastructure. And Brenda? She doubled down. Voice trembling, accusing everyone, me, the county, the FBI, of conspiracy. This man has manipulated government agencies, forged documents, and infiltrated local law enforcement, she shouted. We are victims of corruption. The footage went viral by nightfall. Comment sections exploded. But this time, she wasn't the hero of her own narrative. She was the punchline. The final battle came. One humid Thursday night at the Fairview Town Hall. The place was packed, reporters, residents, even state officials. They called it a public hearing on water rights. I called it a reckoning. Brenda spoke first, of course. She had a PowerPoint, again. Charts, accusations, conspiracy webs. She called me a fraud, a manipulator, a grief-driven con artist. When she brought up Emily. Deadly. We have completed a full investigation, she said. Mr. Hartley's documentation is valid, verified through county, state, and federal archives. The 1924 Hartley Water Management Charter remains in effect. The HOA has operated without legal water authority since its founding. Furthermore, Mrs. Whitmore has filed 14 false emergency reports and obstructed multiple investigations. You could feel the air leave Brenda's lungs. EPA Inspector Delgado followed next. Mr. Hartley's water system is exemplary, a model of sustainable engineering. The only environmental hazard we found was administrative misconduct. Then came Dr. Laura Nguyen, the environmental engineer. She pulled up a chart showing flood prevention data over 9 decades. The Hartley system has prevented an estimated $47 million in downstream flood damage. This man's family protected your homes before any of you even lived here. When they asked if I wanted to speak, I stood. I didn't bring a speech, just a folder. 1 page inside, the county's letter recognizing my hereditary authority. I walked to the podium, took a breath, and said, I didn't ask for this. I didn't want control, or power, or lawsuits. I just wanted to build a dock for the woman I loved. But when someone tried to erase that, I realized some things are worth standing up for, not out of anger, but out of respect. For memory, for truth, for the idea that the rules should protect people, not power. The room was silent for a heartbeat. Then applause, slow, rising, unstoppable. Even Margaret, usually composed, had tears in her eyes. Brenda sat there frozen, her clipboard trembling in her lap. That night, the county voted to dissolve the Silver Lake HOA. 6 months. Using the old trust fund and matching grants to modernize the dam, restore wetlands, and teach kids about environmental stewardship. And on the same spot where my dock once stood, we built something greater, the Emily Hartley Environmental Learning Center. A small cedar building, sunlight pouring through glass walls, classrooms filled with the laughter of children learning about water, life. For Emily, who believed that love, like water, should always flow forward. Every time I see it, I whisper, "We did it, Em. You were right. I built something that lasts." Brenda sold her. For sustainable private-public partnerships. Property values skyrocketed, but more importantly, so did pride. For once, Silver Lake Haven wasn't a gated cage, it was a community. CNN did a segment on it. The Wall Street Journal ran an article calling it the lake that stood up to power. I didn't watch all of it. Fame isn't why I fought. I fought because grief deserves peace. And peace shouldn't come with paperwork. Now, every morning, I drink coffee on the dock while mist curls off the water like smoke, sunlight breaking through trees. Sometimes, I talk to Emily. You with that image, I'll ask you what I ask myself every morning. If someone tried to take away the last piece of the person you loved most, the final thing that kept them alive in your world,